maybe give us some peek on what's the average family like? Like, what's their life like? In maybe we should start with
Sure.
what's average family is in North Korea.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point to start at because I don't think you can overemphasize the difference in overall material quality of life between the capital city and the rest of the country. It's like different worlds almost. Like a lot of the TV imagery that we see of North Korea comes from the capital, and North Korean government runs. They even have this a YouTube channel. I don't know if YouTube shut it down now, sadly, but yeah, like Pyongyang is a fairly it's a city with a relatively high living standard. But then I mean, parts of the countryside are lack running water and sanitation basically. So these differences are vast. But if you want to talk about like an average, as I'm trying to think about this because I think probably the best the okay one region you can look at is like the northeast, this mining region. Let's say an industrial city like Hamhung, if any of the viewers or listeners are interested in looking further into it. It's a fascinating city. So okay, so you have um, let's say you have a like say okay, so you have a family father who goes to work in a mine or in a mining related workplace related to the mines. Um, right now, he wouldn't be doing a lot of work because the demand is lagging for North Korean mining products. So he would maybe sit around, or he would pay off his manager to be able to go and work somewhere where he can make actual money. That's also something that a lot of people do. At every North Korean workplace, you have mandatory political study sessions. Uh, you also have them on Saturdays, which essentially means you only get one day off per week because at least for half of the day, both parents have to be at least like they call it political Saturday. Um, so the person who is really making the money for this imaginary family that I think is somewhat representative of a certain segment is the mother in the family who's working and trading at the market. And this is a phenomenon that started to become very, very common after the famine in the early 2000s and late 1990s. So she'll make something maybe at home. I don't know what it could be, something edible, like cakes or something, and then go sell them at the marketplace. Hopefully her business has grown more and more productive and can bring in more and more money over time. And she, in this sense, is really the one providing for the family because the father's wages can sometimes be, I mean, very low but practically meaningless, depending on who you work for, of course. I should also say that fewer and fewer people work for actual like these state-owned big manufacturing plants that aren't really making anything of value because the private side of the economy has grown so much. So you'll have private partners that they'll partner with a state enterprise to get the legitimacy and the ability to run a business, and then they'll still run it in a sort of private fashion with profit seeking. But anyway, this is so back to our hypothetical family. The kids go to school, of course, and uh, after school, depending on the season, they might have requirements to do so-called voluntary work, such as helping in the harvest or planting. They'll also have these mandatory political meetings in the week with the Kim Il Sung Youth League I believe Kim Il Sung Kim Jong Il Youth League now, that all children have to be members of. Um, so there are two, and then okay, so there are a few things that I want to clarify because yes, like we can talk about this, like this is a very generic picture of life in a totalitarian, very politicized society. But one thing that's really struck me and something I think is important to highlight is, when you talk to people from North Korea, quickly realize that in North Korea, people have everyday lives too, in the same sense that we do. Like you'll meet your friends after school and go play or study or complain about homework or like, I don't know, tease each other or whatever. Like people do ordinary stuff in North Korea too, or, adults will meet their friends and have a drink at home or something. And then it's things like that are also very much part of everyday life in North Korea. And stop me if I'm going for too long, but there are two things I wanna 2 points I want to make about this too. So one, there are two things that make everyday life, I would say, particularly difficult in a society like North Korea, outside of the everyday struggle of just making money. And that's, these mandatory political meetings that in fact take up quite a bit of time. And although reportedly people care less and less about these meetings because the state is not as important for providing for people as it used to be, but at the same time, this is sometimes several hours that you could spend relaxing, that you have to go to these meetings and just sit off the time, I guess. And so people have, relatively speaking, fairly little free time, which this is part of the design of the system, for sure, to keep people in the arms of the government for as much as possible of a day. The other thing, and this is the one thing that when I've interviewed North Korean defectors in South Korea, I would say the one thing that really stands out as a major difficulty in everyday life is the so-called voluntary labor. Like you basically having to, after your regular workday, having to go to, might be a construction site, or go out in the field and help with the planting and harvesting for several hours of every day of the week, for entire seasons sometimes. And right now, I don't know if you've come across this news about the so-called 80-day struggle in North Korea.
Yep.
Like this 80-day struggle for economic construction leading up to the party congress in January 2021. So this is exactly what's happening. That people are, you get told one day by, I don't know, the person at your office who is in charge of reading the newspaper to people, because that's what they do. You have the party secretary of the workplace reading out the most important political news. And he'll tell you like, oh, we have a glorious task happening. We're going to participate in the 80-day struggle for the honor of the party. And I mean, shit, it's just awful. Like then you have to, it's backbreaking, tiring, very hard. And this is part of everyday life in North Korea. And I think this is something that, I mean, for a lot of people in North Korea, it's just, what are you going to do? This is how it works. But at the same time, it's very difficult.
But do you think it's difficult for you and me who saw that this is not norm for in developed countries, and maybe it's somewhat okay for people who live there, who grew up in this regime, or people truly trying to get rid of this, trying to escape?
No, I think it is quite, I mean, just like you said, I think it seems unnormal to us because we didn't grow up in it. I think it seems perfectly normal to most people who live in it. I don't think that means it's any less difficult. Like, especially this whole, the idea of voluntary labor, I think it's something that a lot of people have a very, suffer a lot from. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, if this is life, then yeah, absolutely. I think it seems perfectly natural and normal, and even imagining life without it might be the hard part.
Yeah. So every country has its elites, right? So how do people become elites in North Korea?
Family background is the most important factor for that. The elite of North Korea today is, so if we're talking about the political elite, like the sort of state-sanctioned, actually, I'm going to go on another, it's not a tangent, because North Korea has a more or less formal hierarchy of dividing, like where people are divided into different classes of political loyalty based on their family background. It's called the Songboon System. And it's a very important determinant for social opportunity in North Korea. So basically, depending on the background of either your parents or your grandparents, everyone is classified into a certain category of political loyalty. So at the very top, you have the descendants of the guerrilla fighters that fought with Kim Il-sung against the Japanese occupation. They're the core group of elites. And then their children and their grandchildren, they've gone on to the best colleges and universities, and they can get the best jobs within the government. And I mean, the thing is, even elites in North Korea, like not all elites are that wealthy. A lot of them still have to hustle on the side to make ends meet. But yeah, like these are the people with the greatest range of social opportunity. And at the very, so you asked about elites, I'm going to focus on that. And I mean, you also have several classes of elites. Like if you're talking like the very, very top, I don't know how many people we're talking about, but like the Kim family and a few other families. I mean, they live in absolute luxury. It's very much comparable to the elites of of other countries, like the top elites, who they have access to a great deal of wealth, nice cars, whatever it might be, can send their kids abroad to study in countries with the better academic environments. And they're often I've heard, and this is very purely anecdotal, but that they're very contemptuous of the people in the bottom, sort of. And I'll tell you one anecdote that I heard from someone, and again, stop me if I'm going for too long, but there's an elite university in Pyongyang that was built by a Korean American, actually, who sponsored this, Pyongyang University of Science and Technology. And I don't know if there's one former teacher there who wrote a book about her experiences. It might have been from her book, I'm not sure. But anyway, like, there's this thing that really stuck with me is somebody retelling how these elite students there, with just the amount of how much they despised the soldiers who guarded this compound, because like they were from the country. They were like country bumpkins from North Hamgyong province or something. Like they were just like nothing to them. So yeah, like you have the same dynamic with elites looking down upon the common people in a lot of other countries too. And a lot of these same things exist in North Korea.